All right, so here's some other interesting things we can use, we can find when we use our Newtforce Sensor Mound. Obviously, we talked about impulse being really important, the number one influencer of velocity, and that's the area under this curve. How hard are you pushing back and how long are you holding it? Just for a frame of reference, the green line is Z-force. That's how hard the athlete's pushing into the ground. Here we have Nick Howard, he's with the Reds here. And so the green line is how hard you're pushing into the ground. The red line is forward and back force. When it's on the back leg, it's above the zero line, it's positive. When it's on the front leg, it's negative. And you can see we have force and time going here. The blue line is the side-to-side wobble. So some things we can look at, for example, obviously the number one influencer of velocity was impulse, that is the area under the curve, but the way you gain impulse is to make it wider, which is to hold the rearward force longer. And so to do that, we have to hinge, activate the glute med and glute man, and keep the pelvis tilted while the shoulders are parallel. And in general, the longer we hold that, the more the downstream metrics are, not just velocity, but also, backspin and carry for those four-seamers, and even two-seamers throw better two-seamers when the impulse is wider. The next thing, we look at is just the magnitude of these forces. So right here on the peak back leg Z, in general, most of our best throwers tend to be about 130% of their body weight, somewhere around there. And then the peak back leg Y is somewhere around 70%, okay? And so when we have guys that create a lot of back leg Z, if it's really massive number here, it just indicates that we're going down too much and sitting instead of actually hinging and tilting the pelvis. And the cool thing is you can actually follow that with the video. You can see here, the thing we look for here is that the hips and shoulders stay tilted and parallel throughout the ride, so we don't get those situations where the abdominals are at weird lengths and can't really be optimized to create, to transfer that energy. On the front leg, and so we also look at like the time from Z to Z, which is a big deal, and how quickly you get to there indicates like player tempo. And so we have this indicator here like player velocity. That's really helpful in comparing pitch to pitch to see, does the guy slow down a lot on his changeup and things like that. And then when we look at the kind of combination of the front leg and the back leg, we want the forces to be about 300% of their body weight, but about 1/3 of that should be the front leg stopping the forward momentum. And then we look at the reversal here. We want a really stable turnaround. A lot of guys right here will be really jagged, which means they're just unstable when they land on their front leg. So the shape of it kind of matters too. Now Nick has a tendency to hit really hard and bounce, and so sometimes that's just an artifact there. But we have guys that this thing looks like, it looks like a mincer or something, like you're chopping up mince or something. It's just really jagged, which means they're just not stable on their front leg, and we can work on stabilizing that. And then we want it to come back to zero, but this lead leg block thing, when we do it artificially, it goes really steep and it's almost straight up. And so we need to have it come back fast. We want to stop the momentum fast, but we don't need it to be completely straight up and down. So a little bit of width here is good, as well as a little bit of width there. And then other things that we can look at, like for example, in ball metrics, we tend to see that when a guy gets to peak back leg Z, if we can take the cursor there, peak front leg Z, peak front leg Z, right there on that. And you can see we want to release the ball about the place where we hit that peak front leg Z, or go back a little bit. And so like if they release it early here, and also where we stop the force here, if they release it early, the ball tends to sail. If they release it late, they tend to cut the ball. And so maybe on this pitch, for example, we might see that the TrackMan data where Nick would normally be 16, 18, maybe this one was about 15 or 14, and we can see that his timing was a little off, and he released the ball a little bit later than he would, because you can see on this one he really did. And we can compare that to the TrackMan data and then see that relationship there. Also, the blue line, while not significant on our force sensor study, because I think because the numbers are really small, it is important just from when you get past the data to look at the actual movement. It gives us a signature, and if a guy has a lot of side-to-side wobble, it could indicate that he's across his body and not stabilizing his pelvis. Another cool thing that we can look at, if we go up here, we can look at the stride direction there, and you can see here that Nick is slightly across his body, which means that right here he has to kind of pull the pelvis to open to clear his hip. And so sometimes that can cause you to cut the ball, or to cause your pelvis to spin and either sail it or cut it. And so that's a really helpful thing for us to watch as well. And then we can also, if you can just show them this, how you can compare pitch to pitch, right? So go ahead and find another pitch for Nick. And then we can just look at them side by side and just any random one will do. And now we can look at two pitches and compare the TrackMan data and see what the fine differences were, and see if maybe we can come up with some ideas to change the movement to affect the downstream data as well. So really a lot of really interesting tools that we get out of this, not to mention the fact that we can dig into the background here, and there are other analytics we can watch. Click on one of those and see if, like, you can, this is the menu we use the most often, but you can customize this menu to look at any of these metrics that you want. Whatever indicator you want, you can put them in there as the one that shows up on the display. Okay, things like stride ratio or things like that. You know, you can put that there instead of that pre-formatted menu that we use. You can kind of customize that for yourself. So it's a really great tool. We use it a lot and get a lot of really interesting information, especially when we start comparing pitch to pitch and see what the outcome of the ball flight metrics is. So it's really cool. All right, thanks.